stuff, I will hand it over to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Senator. I'll just do a bit of a sound check. Can everybody hear me? Okay.
A little bit louder.
A bit louder, eh?
Thank you.
Okay, so if I have to belt it out, just
It's all right, my ears are playing silly
just
games
wave
tonight.
at me and tell me to speak up because, you know, I'll probably run out of steam. But probably not. So, thank you all for coming. This is a really big crowd. It's quite terrifying, really.
No, we're very friendly.
But yeah, I'm sure, well, you never know. I'm going to talk about pine trees in a favourable light, so I'll probably get stoned before I leave here. So, my name's Neil Henderson. I'm with Kaipatiki Project. I'm actually from out this way, and I've been out this way a long time. And I took a break from being out this way and went over and worked on the North Shore. And at one point, I got very interested in bats. And we like to think we have some turning on the North Shore in the Kaipatiki local board area, because aside from the Waitakere Ranges and the Hunuas, the biggest blocks of really pristine and really good forest gullies, things like that, is over in the Kaipatiki local board. And so it's an extraordinary place. And I was pretty chauvinistic being out here in Waitakere. But once I got there, we're finding really extraordinary things in places like the Estelle Reserve and out, you know, there's a lot of places out there that are really worth some of the largest kobe in Auckland are in there too. But so I thought maybe we'd have some bats out there, and that's where it got started. Was I thought I'd look for some bats over there, and we I'll just play this next slide, which is just quickly. You can have I'll give you a couple of seconds to have a quick flick through around the organisation that I'm working for now. And that's the Kaipatiki Project. And we're sort of based on the North Shore in Birkdale, but there's a nursery over in Hobsonville Point, and that gets me sort of a little bit closer to the west, and I've done quite a bit of work around the wetland, which is next to the marina, which is a very extraordinary little wetland. And we're helping to restore that. I've been working on that quite a bit, and at some point we will get a matuku turn up there. And I think everyone is here now, so we're going to move into the... So I wanted to start my talk tonight with this person that you will be very familiar with. And when I was putting together sort of PowerPoint around the work that I've been doing for the last 2 years, and this is work that we've been involved with on a joint basis with Community Waitakere, Chris, Community Waitakere, as well as working with Auckland Park. So the reason I've got Jane Goodall up here is mainly because she got to actually see the stuff she's working with, play with it, and run around with it and climb the trees with it. And virtually the whole time I've been working with bats, I haven't seen one actually in the flesh. I saw one years ago when I worked with Doc down in Puliora, and they were flying around a lamp at night, cold nights in Puliora, and there were moths flying around a big lantern with the mist coming through. And then I saw these things coming through, moving around amongst the moths, and realised that they were these little long-tailed bats, the Pekapeka. And then a bit later on, I saw these much larger things coming through, and they were morphs, and they were after the bats. I was beginning to think, morphs. But at that stage, I wasn't a bad person, so I just took it all. So that was the one reason, was I just thought, gosh, you know, after a while, she got to play with these things and got up pretty close. And I'm still hoping to get close. I've got very close, and you'll see that tonight. But still, I haven't actually held the bat in my hand or anything really cool, but one day you never know. The other reason I wanted to put her up was I got to see a documentary of her life filmed by her husband, who turned up one day and decided to live with her for years in this strange place she was hanging out in. And he was a cinematographer, so he filmed her a lot. And that footage, most of that footage has only been available very recently. So I put it all together, and it's really good because it's quite intimate. And it's more about this, there's a relationship thing going on there. And when I watched that, I began to learn a lot more about Jane Goodall. And the thing that I wanted to make a point about tonight was she had no training whatsoever. She liked climbing in trees. And for some reason, Richard Leakey, decided that she was exactly the person, not someone who was fully trained, who got an Oxford degree in ethnobiology or whatever. He wanted someone who could feel their way through, who was essentially one of us, a layperson. And the thing that I've been really interested in doing while I've been at Kaipatiki Project is to build what we call citizen science. And we have so many volunteers now, and so many volunteers who've already had lives working, who have a hunk of time that they can give us as retired people. And often it can be 5 to 10 years. And they don't just want to put plants in the ground or flick a predator trap. There's other things that could be done. And the things that I'm particularly interested in is starting to map and record and monitor the good stuff that we're getting as a result of putting round the handle. Because when you bump a rat off, very quickly another rat will fill that gap. We know this, and regardless of what we use, there's always going to be rats. And if we leave them for any length of time, they just come back really fast. And we know that from TNA, we know that from trapping, we know that from putting bait out, because rats get used to a certain bait. All of a sudden you've got them back again. That's what baits. And the thing is, when you are really successful in an area of trapping, you don't catch any rats. I mean, you get your numbers down to these magic levels, which allow other things to survive. But to keep people continually, you've got to keep doing it. We always have to keep doing it. And even when we're not catching things. So it's kind of hard to get people to go out and not catch anything. So the angle I'm looking at is if we also at the same time starting to monitor what's going right, what we do, then people are going to start excited, because you should be able to say, okay, a couple of years' time, we've got more of these things. We do bird monitoring. And one of the things I've been very interested in is working with bats around this same sort of monitoring. So the bat that we were talking about tonight is one of these. It's an insectivore. And so it's a bit like a swallow. You've all seen swallows at dusk flying around. They're the same kind of creature. They're out there catching things on the wing. And we have another complicated bat, short-tailed bat, who's a bit of a mix of these guys. Well, he doesn't even, well, when you see a short-tailed bat devour a giant worm or something, then they're blood hungry. So the short-tail is an extraordinary bat. Love to work with that someday. But at the moment, it's this guys. And this is how big they are. So they're really little. And when you put a thermal camera up to film some flying around, you just get lots of little bees, like little bumblebees in the distance, going very fast backwards and forwards. They're not really big. They don't come at you. So this little bat here is Pekapeka tuaroa. We've got them in the Waitakeres. It's a bit of a haven for them around the Ark in the Park. And just recently, Colin McDonald down south, who's done a lot of work down South Island, Fiordland, they caught a bat and just randomly checking. They regularly catch bats and band them, do a little band around them, let them go. They caught one, and the band that they found in it just blew everybody away. It was from a bat that they'd caught 28 years previously. So that's really stunning. I mean, this thing weighs about, I think someone said about as much as a $2 note, a $2 coin, in terms of its biomass. How does something, because there's this whole thing with biomass, if you've got a small bowl or something, it's eating all the time because it's the whole surface area to volume ratio means that it's just losing heat like crazy. Whereas a big elephant doesn't lose so much heat. So how does, and everyone used to think that these things lived for very short times because they lived so fast. Their metabolisms were so fast. So these bats, this bat, okay, down in the South Island, so they're sleeping a good deal of the time in the winter, hibernation, that might help get them through. But 28 years is longer than just about every pet that we might have. So it's good to get to know one of these if you can have them turn up under your eaves or something. This little thing can also fly at 60 k's an hour, so that's faster than you're allowed to drive around town, and can go up to about 10 Ks in the night, foraging. So this turn up anywhere really, these things. And they've turned up in Swanson, and I was hoping they'd be turning up out on the north, and there's rumours of them, one turning up in Browns Bay, some in Albany Heights. And the rest of it was just a big gap. We know that historically there was some in Riverhead Forest 12 years ago. So there's a little bit about stuff. You can see that there. The big problems with bats are just the usual stuff. And I think all of you will be very familiar with the usual stuff, so we won't dwell on it. It's us and all the creatures that we brought with us, and the wreck that we left in the landscape in the meantime. So initially we started this project working in the Kaipatiki local board area, but we didn't find any bats. We have these little passive bat monitors that you put up, and you turn them on, and you can come back in a week or two's time and check. And if a bat flies past at night, and they're like flying little flying dolphins, yeah. So they're beeping about 12 beeps a second, beep 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 beep, and that's their echolocation. That stops them hitting trees and other bats and anything else. And so they fly past, and this thing will pick that up. And so what we call a pass is when a bat flies past. And in a night, you might get, say, 20 or 30, and you get really excited, but it could be the same bat just going, you know? And I'm sure they do. You see it on in the videos all the time, don't you? You know, it goes up to the camera. This is what is it? One of those groundhogs that eats everything in this guy's garden. So that's what we do. We set that up, and it's excellent because it tells us what time of the night the bat flew past. It doesn't tell us where it was coming from or where it was going. It doesn't tell us anything about that bat. It's a male bat or a female bat or anything like that. But it tells us a bat came through. And so I spent a lot of time gradually working my way over to where I knew where there were bats, which is the Waitakere. And eventually we got to Kumeu because, as you're probably aware, there's some huge sort of civil construction going to go on in Kumeu in a few years' time, hopefully 20, 30 years' time. And it's a big bypass, and there's other sort of side roads and all sorts of developments, and you drive through Uapai and places like that, and it's now soon to be urban. It's really quite frightening, terrifying, because it's such a beautiful place once I discovered places like Uapai. And so there's big stuff going to happen, a little Hamilton, I believe, in the years to come. And as part of what they need to do all this, a few people had to go out for waka kotahi and look for bats. And apparently they found some, but we weren't allowed to know who was looking or what they found, because that's all part of the game. And so it's got to be a bit like X-Files. And so I'm like talking to people who knew, but couldn't tell me that they knew. But they were hinting and saying, there's bats out there, you know. And so I'd have these meetings, sort of, you know, the kind of typical meeting with the coach at night and the smoker, you know, follow the money. And eventually it was this sort of, you know, just go around Kumeu somewhere like this. And they couldn't actually tell me where to go. So I had to go. But I had a bigger block. So I had an intern who was great. She worked at nights, and on the way to work, wherever, she'd put a bat log around places. And at one point she slipped one under the fence of the film studios, you know, next to Kumeu. And she put it under there and pointed it in. And for some reason we can't decide, we have to go back and check it, and a bat. We got like 3 passes. And we're so excited. It was our first actual bat, because we'd seen everything. We'd seen everything that croaked and squeaked and chirped, and we had to get the filters down so that we got rid of all of the rest of the rubbish, and still no bats. And finally, and that's when our luck turned. So this is sort of, that's a little bat logger. It's just a little box. You can put it flat on a post, you can put it up against the wall. There's different kinds. And these ones are called mini bats. They come from Australia, or from America through Australia. And they're quite good because you can go up with your phone and Bluetooth it, and it'll tell you, when you clip onto the app, how many hits you got that night. Now, it's not always going to be bats. But once you're in Batland, it is bats. But you might get some hits, and then there might be other things. I'll tell you about that a bit later. So this is the kind of typical place. Bats really love a bit of clean water, and they like trees. Now, this is the kind of stuff that you get on your bat recorder, and you can play them. Now, they say they're like little sort of hockey sticks. When you've got perfect stuff, it's got this little hockey sticky thing down the bottom. This is a bat that's very close. But when the bat's further away, they're just dots. And they all come in around this point here, which is about 40, just under 40 kilohertz. Now, I'm talking to you at about 8. And we can, young people, small children, can hear up towards 20. But mostly ours tinkers out around, well, mine's probably 8 and a bit. And as we get older, we lose that high level. But what we do is when we play these, we play them at 1/8 of the speed, and so we get to hear them. And I'll just put my glasses on so I can see if we can play this. So this is your standard, and you can see them, but when you hear, then you hear enough of them, then you know that's a bat. It's coming in at the right, about 38. So who can hear that? Oh, good on you. Everybody's staring, going, huh? So now that's the bread and butter of bat recording. I've got gigabytes of this, thousands and thousands of those. And that's a bat pass, that's one pass. And my best is 8,000 over 3 nights. And you go, even going through those drives you need to, but that's extraordinary. And I'll tell you about where I got that in a little bit. This next one is also interesting because now just at the end of this, you're going to hear normal bat, but at the end, you're going to hear something that's a little bit interesting. And it really, we think it is what it sounds like, but it may just be wishful thinking. So I'll just play this one now. Did you hear that? Now, that's what we call a feeding buzz. And so you've got your bat flying around doing his 2 and 1, flying around doing his echolocation, trying not to hit things. And a moth or some small creature, which is its prey, flies into range. Now, the bat, have you ever Googled native New Zealand bats, there's always this picture of, if it's a decent photo, of this bat with its mouth wide open with these giant fangs coming at you. And I think they give bats a bad name because you always can't help it. Sort of, I even wore a polo neck tonight. You always sort of think that these things are bigger than they seem, and that they're out there ready to pounce, and that they're one of those sanguinivores or something, blood suckers. But the reality is that the bats generate their echolocation by high-pitched screams. They send a high-pitched pulse from their throat out 12 times a second. And it's very strong, very directed, and when they get close, it's so loud. The bat flies really close and you have it up there, really is quite strong, powerful pulse. And it's bouncing off things, so they're hearing for the, like sonar. So when a moth feels a bat hit it with this thing, it's flying through, and all of a sudden, bang, what the heck? Oh, there's another one, uh-oh. And then you got dogfight. It's sort of Tom Cruise style, because the moth is trying to get away, and the bat is trying to catch the moth. And there's, overseas, someone's done some research and it's found that certain moths actually generate things like shedding, like these fighter, they throw off stuff to get the missiles to go into places. Well, moths have developed ways to sort of cloak themselves against that. And one of the ways is to become like a much softer, fluffier thing, for instance. And then the echolocation doesn't come back to the bat. Oh, I lost that moth. And he's just going off like that with his fur coat on. So what happens is you get this thing where the bat begins to generate faster and faster pulses the closer it gets. Because the mot's moving, the bat is trying to catch up with it. And clearly it seems, and again, it's just something that I was told. I've never seen the paper that proved that those are actually bats eating things, but it really sounds like the bat is going, isn't it? Sort of like ping, 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 ping. And that raises problems for me too, because if the bat's flying and he's echolocating, how long can he chew something before he's got a, you know? So, yeah, anyway, it sort of does your head in a little bit. And it's the same thing about bats drinking. Like, bats are mammals, and they get hot while flying around. They've got to, and they love fresh water. They love fresh, clean water. That's the biggest take home from tonight. Pristine, clean water, bats, they love it. Not stinky stuff, you know. It's that old lead a horse to water. Lead a bat to water, clean water. But they've got to drink, and they can't fly in and stop. Like this makes them very vulnerable. They also can't fly in and drop their jaw down and take a slurp, because apparently what they do is they fly down and they've got these little hairy chests. And so they come right down and they just dip the chest in the water and fly up, and then they take a bit of a break and lick their chest to get them. This is amazing, the things you find out. So just down here, I'll just give you one more round of, this is a good strong pulse, look at echolocation. You might possibly hear the sort of a whirring sound. That's sort of their insect. There's lots of insect noise out there, and it's not a head thing. So that's that. Here's another one. So it's very distinctive. So if you hear that, you know. So what I'm going to do is go to the next slide. So this is what we did when someone sort of hinted that there's something around Kumeu. Now this is all historic stuff before we started from the Department of Conservation database. And so you can see the Waitakere is just that city, yeah? There's a bit of stuff happening out here. There's examples of bats turning up in Hobsonville. The red stuff is where no one got a bat. So it's the green stuff that's the bats, yeah? And Riverhead Forest was turned up there, but nothing out here. And yet we were getting these strong hints that there was something out here. And so we had to pretty much blindly go around until I started getting a little bit better at figuring it out. So what we've done in the first part of our project is to fill that gap there, essentially. And that's to do with bats turning up. Like, there's a great place just behind Taupaki School. You can throw a stone from Taupaki School where the bats are. And so I'd love to be able to make Taupaki School a bat school. Because they've got bats so close. And I'd like at some point to put a bat logger on the school building and see how many actually come over through during the night. It's just really made for kids. But you know, you've got time to do so many things. So just to go back, I won't go back. So what's the point of us? Okay, we find these bats out there throughout. So we found lots of bats, quite reasonable numbers, foraging through Taupaki Kumeu area, this area where they're going to be putting this big bypass through. So, okay, we don't know where they come from. We assume they're coming from the Waitakeres. Maybe they're coming from Riverhead, maybe from somewhere else, like up at Nuriwa or something. And are they just flying through there? Is this just a big hunting ground for them? Or do they also live there? And bats have these things called roosts. So a roost is a place where a bat pretty much goes at night and during the day. So there's the daytime roost where the bat's sort of getting under a bit of bark or in a crack and sleeping or hanging out, staying away from the daytime predators. And then at night time, there's the use of the roost for various things as well. And the roost, the sort of the primo roost is what they call the maternity roost, because female bat will raise a single bat cub, batling, a year, but she does it with other female bats, and they found it quite common that they'll find it, and it usually is, and these are the places that you really want to find if you're looking for bats, because they're the ones we need to protect, because they could be trees that those bats have been raising bats in for generation after generation after generation. And very often when they find them, they're really crusty old trees. But a bat will also just, I mean, people have found bats just sitting up and under the eave of their house for a few days because they just were out for a hard night and couldn't get home in time, sort of thing. So they can be really ephemeral places, or they can be really solid places. And they can be at a place as a roost, use it for a small part of the year, and then come back a year later. Or they might just use it once and never come back. You know, that's such a complex thing. So we were really keen to find out, in any place where we got a lot of bats, if they were roosting nearby. And usually the best indicator of roosting is if the bats are coming up close to dusk. So if it's just on dusk and it's bats flying around, they're going to be close. But a bat can fly at 60 km an hour, so if it's half an hour after dusk, well, how far did it go? So it really does your head in. You just make all these assumptions. Just out of interest, down in Hamilton, which has had an even more degraded, you know, all the trees were cut down around Hamilton a long time, generally speaking. These are the trees that you get roosts in Hamilton. Okay, we've got Kahikatea up here, but the Robinia, Tasmanian blackwood, oak, eucalyptus, crack willow, London plane, a bat box that people put up. These are the kinds of things, casuarina, grey willow, pine. They're luckily they're adaptable, and they're finding cracks in trees. And the Robinia is really interesting. It's like a type of acacia, and it's a very hard wood that splits easily. And for some reason, if it's split off, they love it. And it's just providing the right, for some reason, the right. They only need a crack of about less than 20 millimeters to get in. They don't want it any bigger because then a rat can get in, sort of stuff. So ideally, sort of a crack getting in there, a little bit of a cavity out inside, more bats, and you can fit as many bats in as you can, type of thing. So just to let you know that they are adaptable, and there's every reason for us to imagine we'd find some bats out in Kumeu, Taupaki area. Now, talking about roosts, in the Cascades, one of the staff for Auckland Park was walking on the new boardwalk that's been put through from the Auckland Walk. It's about 150 metres in from the top toilet that's there now. And it's just about 30 metres past the big old dead collie one that's there now. And there's a giant rata tree, a massive rata that comes out like that, grows horizontally, and then it climbs straight up to normal trees. So at some point it was forced to grow. It's quite extraordinary. You know, you don't often see a tree, and it's an old tree, it's 500 years old. Underneath it is this little cavity, and that little cavity is now over where they've raised up the walkway. The walkway's come across because obviously someone thought, well, this is cool, we'll have the walkway come in under this tree. Now, what people didn't realise at the time was that that walkway is now 2 metres higher than it was previously. It's up high. It was, people were walking under that tree or near that tree, but no one actually realised that this was a tree that hosted bats. And it was only because the staff member from Auckland Park found these little piles of droppings on the brand new boardwalk, regularly turning up. And he checked in eventually with Ben Paris, and Ben Paris did taste test. Definitely a bat. So once they realised they were bats there, then, and someone who's in the room here, Grant Capel, who's a volunteer with Auckland Park, he had already been doing some bat recording in the Arc area for Chris from Community Waitakere, with some monitors that Chris had given him. And so Grant started recording here, and very quickly when I found out about it, I just thought it's just too good to be true. And at that time, the whole place was closed down. So we got permission through ARC, did some training around Kodiai there, checked in with the ranger, and we set up some recording. And initially it was sound recording. So we're getting a lot of calls of the bats coming through. And every so often, there'll be piles of shit. In fact, Grant's brought me some tonight. So these are, so this is a phenomenal amount of bat poo for a few nights. It's a lot of bat poo. It's a tiny little thing. So don't worry, it's been well desiccated. Eh? The stuff's going for about $300 a pound, you know. You heard of that civet thing, eh, with coffee? Anyway, what I'm trying to get across with this, it was great timing, Grant, thanks for bringing them in. We've been collecting this because basically we're recording all the time. We'll see that soon. But alongside the recordings of bats turning up, we've got these piles of stuff sitting in this nice spot. Some nights, for a couple of weeks, maybe it's just that. And then suddenly you've got these things happening. Big piles of it. So something's happening there. And it quickly became aware that it wasn't just about some bats that came to that tree at night to sleep with the cracks, because it's full of cracks. It's actually, that rata is made up of about 2 or 3 vines that twisted together over all those years, and there's these natural crevices. And so one of my interns managed to get I got the first photo, I must admit. I think this might be this one. So the first bit of video, I put a trail cam up, and I think this is, it's either this one or this one being, this is the one that Loretta, my intern, got. Are you going to play?
Yeah, double click.
You do? Oh, yeah. Okay, so if you look, you'll see, so you see there's these bats flying up into this space up in here. And this behavior is really common, this flying in and then flying out. And when they're flying in like that, they are echolocating really fast. See, that one just went straight in under there. So we knew that there were some that were clearly looking like they lived in there. And so that was really exciting to be able to see the bats using it. So we were able to corroborate the bat poo with the bats, which is always good to be able to do. Now, this is something else that happened later on. So I managed to get a camera in a little bit close and differently. And focusing on this little place here, it's part of this sort of convex. It's like a little bowl. And initially, I got really blown away because we had that. It gets funny because I mentioned before about like when the bat comes in, it's firing its echolocation faster and faster so that it doesn't smack into the place it's landing. But what happens sometimes is another bat gets in the way and it gets confused and it smacks into the bat and knocks it off. And so it could be kind of bad. It's a little bit like keystone bats. So this was when I first got this bit of footage, I was just absolutely amazed because this was at night and the bats were coming in and they were hanging out, literally. And it was quite hard because I remember getting the footage upside down and it seemed normal because they were the right side up. And then I saw these little black things flying vertically and realised that they're it was the wrong way up and that those things were bat poo just falling. But it was all going up, so I knew which way I had to go. So this is where it started getting really interesting. And this was also something that is not so well known. This is in September. This is in the middle of winter. And so we set up monitoring. Grant had been monitoring sort of for about a year or two at other sites. And I was monitoring this regularly, as well as another site. But this was stuff was happening initially around about like 9 o'clock. I think this one says it's about 20:44, so that's yeah. And they also would come in, so they're obviously out and about. It's a cold night. They're coming and I imagine they're coming in to snuggle. But there's a lot of other stuff that can go on too. And I've seen where, and these are just selections of some of the video, but there are certain bats have a sort of proprietary thing around this tree. So another bat flies in and they'll come down and, you from around here? You from the North Shore or Riverhead, you know? And then I'll lead them or direct them to places. And there's a couple of occasions where I'm pretty sure I saw bats doing that sort of wild thing we would also like to know that they do somewhere. But it's not corroborated, so it's just wishful thinking, I think. So this is where we were getting up to 30 bats turning up. And these are sort of corresponding to these sort of nights. The night of the great bat poop. And we're also hoping, because we're starting now to get almost a year, around about a year's worth of data, which is still, you have problems that recorders sometimes fail. You can't get errors. But we're starting to get a sense of, it happens maybe 2 or 3, a couple of times a month, we get these big happenings. So it's like a bat bar where they come out once a month to hang out together. And I'll do it twice in the night, in the early part of the night and then later after 12, and it's like 2 or 3 in the morning. They'll be out hunting and then they'll come back again and do the same, hang out again. And they'll be here for a couple of hours doing this. And what can happen is when, this is really interesting too, they'll all be there and at a certain point, it's time to go. It's like a bell rang. And they don't just one go and then another one goes. They suddenly all just go at once. Oh. Which never do what you want. I think they do it on this one.
If you say they do this a couple of times a month, does it correspond with the mood?
That's what we're trying. My gut feeling is that I haven't had a chance to go through a lot of this data, but it's looking like it's building up towards that period just before, and also a bit of a spillover into that sort of period just after, where the energies are a little bit strange. And so, you know, this, I mean, when I found out that these things live for 28 years, I mean, I also work with freshwater mussels in Pekapeka, and they live for 50 years, but I don't think they have a big social life. But these things, 28 years is a lot of time to be hanging out with other bats and doing stuff. So we're getting to sort of get a sense that there must be the sophistications that we're not even beginning to be aware of. This is when I took the liberty of just getting in a little bit closer, and I had to pull it back because the camera, this is only this far away from, there's so little, and a couple were banging the camera, so I pulled it back in when I saw that happen. I only got a few of these, but it was just again trying to sort of get a little bit closer to see if some of the behaviour of what we might call agonistic behaviour between them, how they relate to each other, whether it's indicating certain things or not. And it's always just annoyingly fuzzy. And so, sort of keep asking people, and they say, oh, we can get you a satellite zoom and all this, but But again, this was as close as I've ever got to that. So
They always seem to be backing into each other.
oh yeah,
It's like the tail end is in them.
I suspect the big reason is warmth, because I think they do function on that basis of they can't sit around too long, they lose so much heat. So if they're going to be still or have a rest, if they're with a bunch of other bats, they stay warm, and obviously the more bats the merrier. But it just is, and I mean, this is constant all year round in this tree. So this is a very important bat tree. I'm going to move on from the things, and we can make these available. So when we did the bat work out in Taupaki and Kumeu, one of the big things is if you know bats are going to turn up regularly in the place, then you can get someone who's qualified, and you've got to get some permission from Don, and also permission from local mana whenua to catch some bats. Because that's the best way to find roosts is you capture some bats in as humanely way as possible alive, and you tag them and you put a tiny little radio transmitter on them, which is sort of glued to the back of their fur, and it usually stays on for about 3 or 4 days before it falls off. They're expensive, but it's worth it, because if you can tag a bat at night and it flies home to its roost, and you can walk around with your little aerials or drone thing or whatever, you can try and get an idea of where it goes back to sleep. And that's the mystery, is where are those Kumu Taupaki bats coming from? Are they coming out of the Waitakere? Are they coming out of Cascades? People have tagged bats in the Cascades, but they tend to live pretty much around the Cascades. But is there a magic place out there somewhere in the hills just around the edge of Taupaki Kumu, where there's a little gully, a little valley, and there's a tree, magic tree? Who knows? I mean, this is driving me mental. What we found was when we went back, say to get ready to have someone come and do this stuff, then the bats weren't there when we wanted them to be there. So in these foraging areas, we need to go back and monitor regularly at these spots to see if there's a pattern. Because if they come to us, use a little roost every so often, there may be parts of their landscape that they say, okay, in their minds, a little bit of anthropomorphizing, but look, there's no point going over there until summer, spring, because that's when food is. So we won't be there. We'll be somewhere else. And I had that whole thing. You only find that out through long-term monitoring of what they're doing. So you have to be doing it more than just a couple of weeks. So one of the things that I found out was that there were bats last seen about 10 years ago right in the middle of the riverhead forest. And so it's a big pine tree forest, and they grow them until they're about 25, 26 years old, and then they cut them. And they do it in swathes, blocks. So one side, pine trees, they'll cut that one down, and there'll be a stream running through, and they try not to give them their dues. They try not to munter the streams up. So this is all Carrick's, Geminata running right through. Good vigorous stream running through there. They're not too bad, those streams that run through, but then there's stuff that comes off the pine forest. I don't know what chems they use, making assumptions. But the bats are in there, and I found when I went back, so these squares, let me get my head around all of this. So these squares here are the stuff that I found first, and that was following up on the blue dots. So the blue dots were where 10 years ago people had found bats. I came back, pretty much went to the same places, and not only found that even though they'd cut down a whole half of the pine trees of where they were, and you would have thought that's the end of those bats. The bats were really vigorous. In fact, in as good a numbers as they'd seen 10 years ago, if not more. And these purple ones are the places that I found bats through going and setting bat logs up, regular places. Now the yellow place here is where I decided to set up this long-term monitoring over a year to see, well, what the bats are up to over that period of time. And so I started around about May 23, going through till currently, so I haven't added in stuff. Total of 19,000 passes recorded. Bats, basically, there's bats there all year round. And here we go, September and October had the most extraordinary thing happen. And this is what you find when you just do it. If we'd gone, the chances of picking one of those days or that time, it's pretty slim. Usually people are looking for bats around from late November through until about March, a little bit there. So it's just this block. And they call it the season. And it's well known through New Zealand. You don't, down in the South Island, the bats go into torpor or they hibernate. No one looks for bats or does bat stuff outside of the season. And right up through into Kaimanawa Ranges, it's pretty cold down that way, below Taupo. But no one knows a lot about the Auckland bats and the bats further up, other than that we have a few. So all of a sudden we're finding it's warmer up here. The bats don't go into torpor. They are active all year round. And in the middle of winter, they seem, I'll show you later, they seem extraordinarily active, and I still don't know what this means. These peaks here represent, like this is an average, 350 passes a night on average a month. But we're talking in actual fact, 3 or 4 nights where 8,000 passes, I recorded 8,000 passes over 3 nights of bats doing something. And the vocalizations that they were making were even different. So something was happening. I don't know what to do with food or whether it was, I've seen footage of bats overseas and they migrate. Like bats, a whole lot of bats will come together and they'll travel large distances. And you see this video footage, you think, oh my God, those are bats. No one's got any sense of whether our native bats do that sort of thing. So maybe that was part of a big bat hula, and bats were coming from far and wide. I don't know. It's just every time I get a new piece of data, I just get another tantalising question. It's really so. Just to balance that. So this is all kudos to you, Grant. So Grant has been monitoring in these 2 sites in the Cascades for about 3 years now. And this is the roost site. So this is the new toilets here, old toilets down here, dead coyote here. That's the rata tree, yeah? So that's where the roost is. And this is what is called the 25 metre. This is AN11. I don't know what AN11 means. But either way, these are spots as part of that Grant's been recording. Now, the interesting thing is that 25 metres here means 25 metres up. So mostly when you're recording bats, we're lazy and we just put them up where we can reach. And occasionally I'll point them up, or we point them out, because we sort of seem to think they're flying around close to the ground. But Grant's clearly showed here that there's just as much activity at 25 metres as it is down below. So they must be hunting at that height, as well as the lower height. So it makes you think when you're out in the field, and you think, well, maybe I need to put them up. Maybe if I'm not getting bats, it's because they're up instead of down. So more questions. So this is this one here is the AN11 one, which is at ground height. And again, this was over between May 22, November 22. And this is pretty regular activity. So there's May through to November. So all through the winter, the bats are consistently active. And these are good numbers, 150, 200 a night passes on average in a month. That's a lot of there's bats out there. They're not just occasionally falling out of their roost. So this is again supporting this idea that our bats up this end of the country are out and about all the time. And similarly, this is what they're doing at 25 metres out and about all year round. And here we go, here's one of these peaks. So I'm not sure how many were recorded on that particular, but this is one of these things. But this happened in November, so it was a spike of activity. And suddenly you've just got this vast number of bats doing stuff at 25 metres. So, Grant, sorry, I'll argue for you up. Do you know what the actual number over those couple of nights was? That was a big one too.
Yeah, I think it was close to about 1,300.
Yeah, so 1,300 passes in a night. It's a lot of activity. So this is the roost site, and this is where all this stuff has been gathered, and where you saw the bats turning up in their large numbers to hang out. And again, I've got all this, we've still got all the data, kept every scrap of it. So we can actually go through and look and actually see, can we tightly link this to a month, some sort of, monthly cycle? And clearly the more we do this, the more we're going to get a sense of what they're doing during, the use of this particular tree, because the tree is clearly being used not only as a place to sleep, but as some sort of social gathering place. an important thing for them to be able to go to in their nightly routine, perhaps. And we don't know how long they've been doing this for. It could be for generations and generations. This is a very old tree. And the thing about it is unusual because it's very hard for rats and things to get up into that place because they've got to run upside down for a while. And rats are pretty good, but not that good. So it does start to make you think, well, if we were going to build sort of, people are building bat boxes and things with cracks, little things, but what about if we were building them some of these sorts of shaped things so that they had the right, so they could come and hang with each other, literally hang out. So it's just a thought, some different ways to think about this. Okay, now we're back to Jane, and I'm just trying to think about why. Mostly, the other reason was when Jane Goodall went to Gombe and first got started, it took her months before a chimpanzee even went anywhere near her. And she was right on that point, that classic point of, that's it, I'm rolling up the mat and I'm going. And that's when, at some point, it's almost at that point, that the chimps came to her. And that sort of kicked it all off. They sort of recognised that they could trust her and all this sort of stuff. The reason I've come back to this is because Jane Goodall's experiment is still going. What she set up all those years ago is still going just as strongly. So that site, those chimpanzees are still being monitored by people today. So it's a long time. It's probably one of the longest animal behaviour studies ever. And I haven't seen the latest research, but that was the thing that really impressed me, was what she kicked off. It's still alive and they're still doing the monitoring. And we all like the idea that if we start something that people will continue with it, pick up on it. This is a point where it gets sort of fruity, and we can stop now because I think there's enough, but this gets really interesting, my personal interest. And that was, I showed you before the pinging, the echolocation, and then there's the catching, the chomping. But bats also talk to each other, and they have social calls. They have grunts and squeaks. And in the literature, it's basically grunts, squeaks, all sorts of things. And then there's what they call complex social calls. And I don't know what they were, but when I was out in Riverhead Forest, and this is kind of classic stuff, this has been harvested, it's a slash that's left, in the background of the new pines coming, there's old pines in the background. This place is full of bats flying through here. At one point I thought, someone had said, oh, they'd seen bats coming out of a wood pile. I thought, gosh, do the bats live in the piles of slash? I mean, maybe they've found little nests in there, there's all sorts of things. Because I'm desperately wanting to find where these might live, because even up to 25 years old, the pine trees don't have any cracks. I mean, they're not very attractive for roosts to get into. So are the bats flying into Riverhead Forest for food from somewhere outside? Or have they found somewhere in Riverhead Forest that they got a tree? Is there a tree somewhere? And there's the old block between the two iwis blocks, and a little piece in the middle, a buffer owned by Waitakere, and it's got gum trees and it's got a few kauri. It's got a whole mess of stuff. No one's milled it. And I think, are they in there maybe? In an old gum tree? Not sure. But constant recording of endless echolocation, every so often I would hear this strange, it sounded like a bird call. It was a frequency modulator sort of thing. I've only, outside in the field, in the forest, I've only ever recorded a total number of 12 of these. And I think it's the same bat. So a bat's flying through at night, and he just saying, I've got to sing. And so Elvis just pumps it out, pumps a couple of these things out, and then I don't hear from him for another week or two. And I moved around, and he's somewhere else. I know it's him. And so it started to raise these questions around, I mean, they're now 28-year-old mammals who can use their voice, the sophisticated technical sonar process, and I've seen it where they sing and do the sonar at the same time. So they're obviously Tibetan. They've got the thing going. So, And in the literature, most of our ideas around the ontology of talking, speaking, singing, comes from studies on birds. But people have found that, you know, bats are mammals, and if bats can vocalize, if bats could sing, maybe we should be studying them because they're a bit closer to us than reptiles, and those dinosaur thing, birds. So here we go. So this is the kind of stuff that I was hearing. So the ping, they're coming in at about 38 kilohertz. But this stuff, it's coming in just around in under 20 kilohertz, so it's down lower. And so it's quite a different thing. It's not to do with finding its way. And now, at the roost site, where all the bats hang out, so I'm recording there. Now, on one occasion, we just got vast numbers of passes, but there's lots of very thin vibration type passes where the bat's obviously flying into the tree and going faster and faster. But then there's lots of stuff where the bats are actually talking to each other. There's a bat there saying, "Hello, dude, I'm here, don't hit me," or whatever they're saying. And so it starts to get a little bit more interesting. And the good thing about the roost, which is such a goldmine in terms of sort of data, is there's so much of this social core because it's where they're hanging out, literally hanging out. And so we get a range of things. So it takes a bit to kick in. So we know what that is. Can you hear that sort of background growling? We get that a lot. Now, it's like a low level. Well, that would sound a bit like muttering, and people hear that. Like I know some people in Waitaka and Christian who say, November, we can hear the bats in the trees. We hear them. And so there's stuff coming in at these low levels, which sounds like grunts and... So this, now we're going to go down, so I don't want to keep you guys here forever. This is the kind of stuff which visually looks really exciting. In fact, it almost looks like writing when you see it. And this is stuff from a roost. Oh, wait, where are we? Down here. So there's lots of this. And there's lots of versions of it. And I'm thinking, are these things that are specific, is it specific to a bat? Is this going to be a way we can figure out if this is bat A or bat B? Or I'll just... And look, these ones over here. What was that? Oh no. This is at the roost. So this is happening all through the night when the bats are there. And these are just, again, and there's subtle differences between, and let's get them all going, eh? Here we go. So this. They're all different. They're slightly different, yeah. So there's some, and what's fascinating is that this is all stuff all coming out of one bat vocalizer. And just as an opera singer, even when they're probably trying to getting all the right notes and things, you know who's singing. If you listen to opera, you know if it's sort of very callous or if it's cheery. after you've listened to it long enough, because there's that individual element which must infuse it, So that was just, again, big questions, eh? Okay, guys, that's enough. So that raises that question of, is because, we listen to these things and we don't know which way they're coming. I'd have to put like stereo bat monitors up just even to know. But, I'm lucky enough to get 1 or 2 bat monitors rather than use all my bat monitors just to figure out where they're coming and going. But it's one way to do it, is you've got one placed here and one here, and you can actually see that little time shift between when the bat comes that way or that way. But then often the bats, and I've seen them on the thermal camera, just fly all around like that, so it doesn't help. Just when you think. Now, when I was talking about individual, when the bat's coming in, and we're almost there, when the bat's coming in to land, this is all at the roost. So these are what the bat does, I'm absolutely sure, but because it seems very consistent. When the bat's coming really close into land, it's got to get it right, because they can injure themselves. They're doing it all the time. They don't want to hit something hard and hurt their little wing or something, or brain themselves. And so their stuff is really fast. The pulses are really fast. And within that, if you can see, there's like a shadow, like an empty space. Can you see these? It's sort of like this ghost space. Now, they can be different, but they can be consistent. So it sort of looks like a bat has a certain way of doing this. This requires like incredible control and vibration of that, whatever it is. And it produces something, but it will be different between bats. And so one of the ways potentially to see how many bats are coming is, we've got some pretty sophisticated AI type programs now, which can be trained to pick up the changes in these shapes or the relationships. See that shape there, very similar to that. And there's other ones. And so I've only just started looking, and some of them look quite different. And it's that empty space where for some reason the bit of vibration is not as strong or something like that. So these are just some examples of ways that we could, and again, these are just a couple of other, that one's quite clear. It's like a big letter C almost there. And I'll just have a look and see if these were playable ones. Now, these are more just to do with, this is where it gets really complex, where you've got, these are low pitched, part of what we call that social call singing stuff. This stuff up here is all to do with navigation. It's all happening at the same time. And if this is the same bat, that is a really incredibly complex thing of using, this vocal characteristic it's got to not only navigate in a really intense tight space, but also probably carrying on some sort of conversation with someone or something else happening. So it just seems like very, very sophisticated. That was it. I sort of left you hanging on that cliff. Well, thanks so much. You've been really patient and flapping around here like.
So what's the next thing you're going to explore?
So what's the next thing? Okay, so the first thing I promised myself I'd do it is if there's an opportunity for Forest Bird Waitakere to raise a couple of grand, then we need to get grant a couple of better bat monitors, because the ones that he's using at the moment, they're excellent microphones, they're great things, but for some reason they've got batteries in them that last for 5 days. And that's a nightmare. Yeah. The bat ones that we've got, the little mini bats, you can get about 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks out of them. And I'm getting one now that's going to run on lithium ion, sort of 2,300 milliamps per hour sort of stuff. I'm hoping to pump that up to about a month solid, because the next step really is this monitoring, this long-term monitoring, because I think to be ready in 20, 30 years time for what's going to happen in Kumeu, as far as the bats are concerned. And the bats, I'll take a little breather in a sec to really re-emphasise. The bats are running right through our landscape. They're connecting up. I mean, next for me is where the bats from Riverhead come from. I know there's bats just up north from there. I've just been up to help some people in Maharangi West look for some bats because I think they've got them. It's connecting up. Where are the bats in our local area? And can we set up some permanent monitoring at certain sites? And what I want to do is have about 5 sites within the community Taupaki area where we record all year round. So it means you've got to have a bat logger there on deck all the time, all year. And ideally, for really important sites, you need 2, because every so often one of them fails, and then you've just lost, especially if you got it out for a month, you've lost 2. So in some ways you need that. It's just like computers. You need your backup. And then we can actually generate stuff to say, this is what they do out here. They come to that place. You know, we get 5 or 10 years monitoring. We say, wow, every year between these 2 months, bats come into this spot here. And now we know why. It's because there's a certain insect that was in the stream there that is really pristine. Now, the last thing I'm going to say, other than any questions, is when we look at this stuff, so one of the things I'm really interested in is we're desiccating it because it's one of the best ways to keep things like environmental DNA sort of solids, so without decaying. Is desiccation is better than alcohol. Next best thing is deep freeze, you know, to desiccate it, so I can deep freeze. But eDNA is useful because we can find out what the bats have been eating. Normally we'd have to separate stuff out and go through and find what bits have been left behind. And that's how I used to do it. And it's a great job for someone who's an entomologist. There's definitely some diptera on there. I don't know what. Maybe a Hymenoptera or something. But it's bits and pieces, and it's always biased towards those things that leave lots of bits and pieces, like a beetle or a bug. Someone did some recent work in the Hamilton area, I think, with eDNA of bat poo, and they suddenly found it was full, the eDNA was full of representatives of soft-bellied things like mayflies, the stuff that comes out of really good, clean water. And it's the sort of thing when you do, you know, a school Y-care test and you look for invertebrates, you find the bloodworms and things like that down at one end and the snails. But at the other end, if you can find, well, you know, Dobson flies, mayflies, larvae, or caddis flies, you're in good water. You're in the Opanuka stream at the top sort of stuff. That's what the bats like. That's what they love. They like to eat those things. And so they suddenly found that bats are actually aquatic animals. They're really tightly linked to bodies of fresh, clean running water. And it's so important. And the other thing I found out as well, I saved it to last to sort of stop being stoned halfway through, is if I get a big aerial photograph of the Kumu Taupaki area, just about any of these places with fragmented countryside. Old trees are now just things like macrocarpa, 150 years old pine, stands of pine trees, you know, those farms with the copse of pine trees, getting up to about harvesting age, 25 years, 20, nice and tall, good form. For some reason, bats love pine trees, and they love pine trees that are next to some clean running water, and there's quite a bit of clean running water through. What comes down through under Waitakere, the stream, the corner there, it's really quite clean and clear. And so I'm able now to pretty much go copse of pine trees on a map, clean water there, bats. I'll go there and I'll put a bat log out. There's a very good chance I'll get bats. And so it's become a lot easier to, but it means to me at the moment, and this is a transitional thing, we are planting stuff, we're trying to bring habitat in, trying to create connections. But for the bats, that's probably not going to be much chop for at least another couple of 100 years. It's got to, they like these, and as Grant's indicated with this 25-metre stuff, they like these walls of, and a pine tree, when you think about it, it's like a cove. It's like a big remu that's grown amongst others that forms there's some uniformity. There's something about, okay, I'm only just guessing, and it may be specifically that there are certain bugs and creatures that are associated. Those are the next steps too, is to start finding out what's out there when the bats are out, in terms of things they might eat, stuff like that, and also checking this sort of thing, finding out what. Trouble is, the only place you can get poo is at a roost, so you can't run around outside, you know. Try to catch one. Up here, please. So that was the sort of the big take home, apart from all the stuff that the bats are out all year round, is they do like pine trees, and so pine trees performing a necessary function for a while. So in some cases it'd be sort of like, don't harvest it, leave those guys. The bats are loving them. Let's plant up around them nearby and hope for the best down the track. The other thing is bats really like clean water, so it's every reason for us to really push for any protections that we could keep on water to stop it getting any less pristine than it already is, or to work on the kind of projects that a lot of us are involved in already, and that's trying to replant up around the streams and try and cut down what's coming into them, things like that. So, short of any other real quick questions, that's probably it. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, just, did you? Yeah.
Have you found any way and does it change their how they must be nursing for a while?
I haven't seen a baby bat yet. My video recording is very truncated. It's just a snippet. I mean, I've still got things to work out with the roost site and Cascades. Because to be honest, I just don't feel like you can continue to have a boardwalk where you can climb up on the handrail and actually put your hand on that place where those bats are landing. So still working with rangers and people like that. I think it just needs to be shifted a bit. You know, and I'm trying to be really patient around it, but I just feel like we really aren't seeing something in that respect. But in the meantime, we need an opportunity. That curved roost place thing would be amazing one day to get back there with some video, set it up. Because unfortunately, what happened when we had a lot of gear set up there when there was no one around, and then just around about the time that it opened up, November last year, someone came through and stole it and ripped it off the tree and broke it while they did it. So it wasn't really even people who were, and that was quite disheartening for a lot of reasons. But yeah, anyway, I'll repeat it again. If there's an opportunity to get grant set up with a bit of better gear, I think that would be a really good step for this organisation and ARC to keep monitoring those bats, the ones that he's doing already, because already, I think he's shown us quite a lot of stuff that we didn't know before. And this stuff hasn't really got out into the broader bat community. So I think it will create a few little ripples down south, hopefully. John?
Any thought of finding your roost trees using what you've got in your hand there? Get a trained dog?
There's a guy in Devonport, Takapuna, who's got a dog, a sniffy dog.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to get sort of close. I mean, you could take a dog out.
No, not randomly. You're getting an idea like
What we found was one of the things that was a little bit difficult, aside from the bats deciding not to turn up, just what we wanted to do with some catch and tag. But it was both iwi that we needed to work with were going through a lot of turmoil. Te Kara really just coming out of a lot of that now, and also Ngāti Whātua Kai. And it was really hard to be able to, and I just felt really awkward to make contact with people saying, give me your permission to do what I want to do. So it just didn't seem right. And understanding that they will stop full of stuff. So we have to be patient around that. There are other alternatives, as you suggested. Down south where they're doing some really good work, they sort of walked through trees and looked, and they had nice terrarium copses and stuff. It's like, I went down there and I was like, man. But also, I think they were probably overestimating a little bit of the roosts that they were finding. And they did find some good roosts. We've tried, we haven't quite got to a point where we're still looking for one.
That was quite a less complex situation, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it was just small amounts of trees and lots of paddock on either side of it.
And,
yeah.
you know, we've got, and this is the thing, up in the foothills above Taupeki, and if you head over further, you get to sort of Muriwai and Golders Bush, that sort of stuff. There's this lovely couple, Conrad and Barbie, who own about 200 acres up there. And I found bats on the property where the pine trees were. But they've got all these gullies full of the most phenomenal natives, you know, and they're doing trapping, they're doing some stuff. They need to probably keep a few more cows out of some of the areas, but phenomenal place. I mean, it's just beautiful. It's really, it just, I went into one of these sort of glens full of all this, and I thought, this beautiful stream, you know, with probably Oxtead's frogs leaping around in it or something. And I thought, this has got to be enough for my bat. Nothing. You know, I went all over the place. I got nothing except when I went near the pine trees and I got these. So yeah, so I'm not trying to push pine trees, but it's where they're at the moment. But so I'm not sure. It's just such a mystery, and it is solvable. Like the film studio, there's big old pines right around it, and they let off explosions and all sorts of things. But there's some bats come through there. They're quite hard people to get in touch with because they're supposed to be helping us, but they probably don't really know too much. Having an endangered species sitting where they do their explosions. But yeah, sorry, any other questions? Yeah.
In like mainstream literature for years, it's been said that there was a colony, a big large colony in Arkema Park, and also just 2 kilometres up the road in Redwood Parks, the golf course, and like so, could a lot your tail-packing ones have come from Redwood Park? Because it's not very far from
Chris from Community Waitakere has been doing sort of monitoring and investigative stuff around here. Because technically, I mean, I'm working for Kaipatiki Project, we're kind of the north. And so I said, oh, if I come over, saw it sort of riverheadish. And the only reason I'm really in Waitaki is because I live out here in Glen Egan anyway. I always end up coming back and it's like, oh. But the roost really drew me in. When I discovered what the potential of that roost was, I just couldn't resist the to try and also at the time I really wanted to protect it. Because to begin with, oh, we found some bat poop. It was pretty blasé about it. But we know now that they're there all year round in big numbers. This is not just a casual tree they pop into every so often. It's a big time place. It's an important marae, really, for these bats.
So is Redwood Park still happening?
I don't know. Yeah, I know Redwood Park, but I don't know.
It's for years
If,
in like mainstream media that it was.
Yeah, so I'm not aware of sort of solid data. There's bats turn up down there. So if you know of any studies or anything that's more solid, I'd love to see that. I'll talk to Chris and ask him about it. But I only knew that bats had come down into Swanson. But then I thought, because they're up Christian Road, and they come down Christian Road, so they will come right down through. And it looks like a good place for them.
Well, there was one tree that Ben Paris put a cover around, you know, a metal band so possums couldn't get. It was a pine tree.
Yeah.
And that had a roost in it.
Okay, well,
at that point.
I'll check.
The metal has fallen down.
Yeah, I'll chase it up and find out, because it's easy enough for us to put a logger in there. And if they do what the bats are doing, they'll be there if they're there at any time. And the good thing about it is, like I was meeting a bat guy, and he said, oh, I can't meet you until around May, and that's when the season ends. And I was like, so it's someone else I saw a hand. Yeah. Yeah.
I was wondering whether you had any success with eDNA. That was my
eDNA.
the use of eDNA, and whether it's pinpoints enough or not. And the second question was on you should give an update as to whether anything or what is happening at Auckland region-wide.
Okay, the
2
second one.
minutes, because I think
Yeah.
people also
That's-
don't expect to be here till midnight.
So
Yeah, quick.
the second one is huge, and it's up in the air. And the ball is sort of sitting with Auckland Council to a degree, and they've seen our stuff. So they've seen some of the higher ups in biodiversity, and they seem pretty interested in what we're doing, and it's what's happening in the south. And so, fingers crossed, but nothing really constructive. The eDNA thing, I think you all heard about in Christchurch. I think it's the Avon or one of these rivers. No bats in the Christchurch area for ages because they cut everything down back in the day. And someone just did one of those eDNA things. You sample for everything, and you get yaks and you get dolphins and all sorts of things because someone threw something up the other end. But they got some hits of long-tailed bats, and that was really exciting. Doesn't, no one's, I haven't heard whether they found it, but it suggested that somewhere up there there's some bats again, and that's really exciting.
It's just because the sampling is so easy and something you just do it in your backyard and you don't need any permits or whatever.
Yeah, and
It can help you
with
look in more detail.
it's to use it for looking, we mostly sample streams. So apparently there's variations you can sample the air. It's still expensive for charitable trusts like us, sort of. And I'm doing a big project. I can come back and talk to you about this another time if you can stand it. With freshwater mussels, kakahi, using eDNA to test for them through the Coatesville Rangitapuni river system. The big meandering one with the Ranui stream off it. So there's all these tributaries, and they don't run too fast, but they're really significant, good bush, and full of, hopefully we find that they're full of freshwater mussels, which are doing their job of cleaning streams as well. And we're using eDNA because to jump in the stream and forage around, it's lots of work, it takes a lot of time, and the tuna in those streams are huge. And you're standing there and you can't really wear gloves when you're reaching under it for a mussel to run along and see how many, and then all of a sudden you meet one of these turkeys, and it is big, it's just like, and they got those little thingy, raspy things that hang on and don't let go. It's hard to get volunteers in for that stuff. So a bit of eDNA sort of, get the sample, yep, nice, get 3 of those, and we're done, and we know if they're there. So that's what we're doing with that stuff. The last thing about this that's fascinating is, where you saw all those bats turning up, about 30, we don't know if they're all males, it's a boys club, or they're all females, or if they're males and females, or if they're males and females all the time. And one of the things that I've thought, and I've been making some inquiries, is with the stuff you can actually analyse hormones as well. So there's potential to find sex hormones. So at least we might know, say, on a big night, that, or just on a small night, might be different. So that's something. So that's why we're keeping and bagging this stuff assiduously. And I'll put it into my desiccating pot with the rest of it. So I think we've probably done,
Okay, thank you, Neil.